Hello, hello. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this Twitter space. I'm your host, Lori Spencer. Great to have you here. I appreciate you joining this space. Sorry for the late start. I was just trying to get my act together. We've got a lot to talk about tonight, a lot of news to cover. Nick Brana is supposed to be joining us tonight. And unfortunately, he just texted me and said that he's got a house full of family members. They're preparing for a family reunion and a wedding. And he's got a house full of people right now and can't find a quiet place where he can join us. So he might not be able to join the space tonight, but hopefully Pasta can kind of fill in for Nick Brana tonight. And I think you guys are on the same page and you're kind of thinking the same way about the next move.
Well, yeah. We are not thinking completely on the same page. One of the big disagreements me and Nick Brana have is about ballot access, right? And I'm not here to throw dirt in his face. He's not here today, but I mean, he's one of the heads of the People's Party, and he can tell you they have ballot access, I think, in one state. And I think that's the elephant in the room right now that we have to discuss more than anything, because I'm getting this sense that RFK is going to announce he's running as an independent. And that's going to put him behind the eight ball. Very much so, rather than him running as a libertarian. Because if he did run as a libertarian, he's going to already have 35, 36, I think 37 states showed up for sure, where they don't have to waste a lot of their resources and get them on the ground to get on the ballot in those other states. They can concentrate on getting on 13 states. It's very hard in some states to get on the ballot. Georgia, for one of them, where it's required, and I think you only have 6 to 8 weeks to get the signatures. And don't quote me on this, because this was a couple years ago when I paid a lot of attention to ballot access. And it was always one of my big things when I would tell Nick, I'm like, Nick, this is not a easy thing. You're making it sound like it's easy peasy to get on the ballot. But I think in Georgia, you have to get 5% of the registered voters. You need that many signatures to get on that ballot. And it's going to be almost damn near impossible to get on the ballot in places like Georgia. It's going to be tough in New York. It's going to be tough in California. It's going to be tough in Hawaii, because Hawaii, you can only get on the primary, the independent primary. And once you do get on the independent primary, you only need 25 signatures and I think $75. But then in that independent primary, I believe you need to get 10% of the votes, 10% of the actual voters to get on the general election ballot. So this is the elephant in the room here. And it's going to be one of those situations where hopefully, and I'm sure Bobby has looked into this, the hurdles he's going to have to go over, because there's also this thing. What happens is nowadays, and they just did this in Guatemala, and they mirrored what happened in Michigan 2 years ago in the governor's race, where they'll just tell you a day before the deadline that your signatures are invalid. They're not valid at all. You can't use them, and they won't put you on that ballot. So once that is handled and they tackle that whole independent ballot access problem, which is a huge problem, it's going to take a lot of his resources. And right now we understand a lot of the money he's using in his resources for his own security detail after everything you laid out. And he believes that's a theory and why they're doing this, because they can bleed him this way. We have that issue to deal with, which is going to be incredibly hard to get by, and that's getting on the ballot in all 50 states. And we know for sure if he runs as an independent, he's going to run with a 50-state plan. So that's a tough one. And once that's done, too, as well, not to throw even more monkey wrenches in the whole situation, we have the whole voting system, which is so out of whack and crazy, where we still have ballot harvesting legal in 27 states. We have proprietary software counting our ballots. There's so many issues, drop boxes out in the middle of nowhere. So there are many, many hurdles to jump over right now. And I'm going to be disappointed if he runs as an independent. And like I said, Laura, my libertarian friends aren't calling me back either. I would be knocking down his door and offering him a seat at the table there at the Libertarian Party. And I think that is the most logical route and actually gives us a chance if he does run as a libertarian as opposed to an independent.
Well, actually, Lori, I hope you can give me just a quick second to speak, and then I would Diane, I don't know if she's here.
Yeah, I invited Diane Sare because she's an independent candidate in the state of New York, and she has been there and done that. I'm hoping that she can join us because she knows all about the shenanigans that they pull to keep independent candidates off the ballot in New York. New York's a particularly difficult state. And I know that you worked with Diane Sare on that campaign.
I
So,
did, and I do see
yeah, could you
Diane is
enlighten us a little bit?
Yeah, well, I also see Diane here, so I would ask you that you make her a speaker, and then I don't want to step on her. She is here. I see her, yeah. But, Pasta, just to respond to you, I'm going to tell you this right now, man. No third party really has grip on ballot access, okay? I mean, one of the things with Cornell that was so disappointing was that he went over to Green Party, and people were making the argument, oh, well, ballot access. The Green Party does not, as people say, oh, they have ballot access in what? So I heard 48 states. I heard 23 states. It's bullshit. You have to, if you don't have, I don't want to get into the nuts and bolts of it. It's going to be a fight for every single third party, whether you're a libertarian, an independent, unaffiliated, or Green Party. And as somebody who only took 2 days off in 6 weeks and worked from 5 a.m. to 6 p.m. Every day, what you're saying is right. It is hard. We did it in New York State, which is one of the toughest states to get on the ballot. And the Green Party couldn't do it. The Libertarian Party couldn't do it. But the LaRouches did, right? And we did it with a nickel to our name, if anything. We had no money, okay, none whatsoever. We kicked ass, all right? And it didn't take money. It took people who were actually dedicated. It took people who wanted this to happen. And the reason I brought up Cornell is because he squandered the potential. If he really wanted to get ballot access, like RFK Jr. has the ability to do it now, that means he has to actually build a movement. That means he's going to actually have to change the country before he becomes president. And if he does that, if he actually succeeds in getting on the ballot in all 50 states, you have to think about what that requires in terms of manpower. Don't even think in terms of money, because the money is not going to get you the result. It's the people who actually want him on the ballot to do it. So I'm not going to go on anymore. I really do want to pass this on to Diane and Anastasia, who have better insight on this, but all I'm going to say is, it's the people that will make it work. And if Bobby gets on all 50 ballots, all 50 states, he will win the presidency. But please, Diane, if you're on, please.
Yes, I just added Diane Sare. Welcome, Diane. Glad you could join us.
Thank you.
For anyone who's maybe not familiar with you, could you introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about your experience running as an independent candidate in New York?
Sure. Well, I did run in 2022 against Chuck Schumer as an independent. In the state of New York, there is no such thing as independent candidate. If you register to vote, you just declare yourself unaffiliated. But if you petition for ballot access, there isn't an independent line. You have to do what they call create an independent body. So I said I was a LaRouche independent. Then they had a farce, which was the Republican Party trying to get a second line. New York has fusion voting, which means the candidate can be on multiple lines. The Republican, Democratic Party, Conservative Party, and Working Families Party are the four parties that have lines. The way you get a line, which means your party has ballot access without having to petition. The way you get a line is you have to get, it used to be 50,000 votes. They moved that up to 2% of the vote, or over 150,000 votes. That is why, and it was so rotten because both the Libertarian and Green parties, which, as people know, have been around for years. Last year was the 50-year anniversary of the Libertarian Party. They had candidates who won about 100,000 votes each in 2018. So in 2018, by New York law, the Libertarian Party and Green Party actually had attained ballot status, which meant they wouldn't have to petition, and they could hold a nominating convention and just put whoever they nominated at their convention on the ballot. Well, in 2020, that was all thrown out. They made new laws, and they said, no, you can't have a party line unless you get 2% of the vote. And if you want to get on the ballot, you need 45,000 signatures statewide in 6 weeks. And that may be the most onerous requirement. Other states, Texas has an insane requirement. I think it might be 80,000 signatures, and they're trying to double it to 160,000, but you have like 6 months, or I forget how long. At any rate, it's a much longer period of time. It's clear people tried to say this was Cuomo responding to Cynthia Nixon running as whatever she ran as, something else, in some independent line, and therefore they wanted to make it impossible. But it really isn't just New York. We've looked at this a little bit. I'm sure there are other people who know much more of the whole country, but I can tell you that this was going on nationwide. Every state was making it impossible. And New York was very flagrant. When they changed the law, they literally said, we're going to give matching funds. They don't give them to federal candidates anyway. So if that were the logic, it shouldn't have applied to a Senate race, but U.S. Senate race. But they said, we don't want, quote unquote, frivolous candidates on the ballot. So if you're not a Democrat or Republican, you're basically frivolous. And therefore, you have to jump through burning rings of fire, do 6 somersaults, and fly to the moon and back in 6 hours. And then you can be determined non-frivolous. So when my volunteers heard that they had tripled the signature requirement, they basically said, give up. And I said, no. But everyone told me it's going to be impossible. I had people who said, well, Diane, when are you going to throw in the towel and just say it can't be done? And I was like, no, we're doing this. So I actually built a network. I started a print newspaper because I figured if I had people out handing out newspapers, they would be engaging people. And I built a grassroots network of, not huge, like 225 people around the state who were actually getting out my newspaper. And then when we got to the petitioning, I told people, you cannot pay someone to do this because this is going to be 24/7. I wanted to have 400 volunteers. We had only 200 volunteers, which meant that there was no downtime. And we were going 7 days a week, 10, 12, 14 hours a day. We had a conference call every single night at 8 p.m. over Zoom where people recited poetry. We got an international strategic briefing. We had to keep our minds alive because what we were trying to get, we had to get 2,000 signatures a day. And since we didn't have more than 200 volunteers, we didn't have redundancy. That is, you could not have a low day. We had to figure it out. So if it was raining, you would go to some underground parking garage. If the store manager threw you off, you would go to another grocery store. If whatever it was, you were fighting and clawing to get the signatures every day. And the calls were to help us keep our esprit de corps and talk through. And I think everyone thought it was impossible. But then, and I also, by the way, I did not tell our volunteers how many signatures we had. I didn't want anyone to know in the state how close we were, and I hired a 24-hour security guard to guard our petitions. And we, so when we were getting close, the last 2 weeks, I think some genius FBI agent or someone figured out we were going to get it, and we started getting really bizarre harassment where people would go up to, and these are like really sweet people. Many people who were involved hadn't been political before, and they were timid, and we had to work through all kinds of things for them to have the courage to go talk to strangers and ask them to sign. So we had a wonderful volunteer at a grocery store. He had been doing bang up work, getting over 100 signatures himself a day. And a guy comes up, rips the clipboard out of his hands, throws it on the ground, goes into the manager and says that our volunteer assaulted him. And this made the volunteer so upset and freaked out, he never went out another day. And that was the end of it. Yeah, and that was the kind of thing that began happening the last 2 weeks, just dirty tricks, nasty harassment, people going in and claiming we were assaulting them, harassing. I mean, it was, at any rate, I mean, thank God I worked with LaRouche for 35 years and we're sort of battle hardened. We've been through the wars, and So we did it. We filed 66,000 signatures, and I got on the ballot, and I was the only independent in the state to succeed. And the Libertarian Party lost their status. They unfortunately tried to pay people to petition and just got ripped off. The Green Party wasn't even remotely close. I mean, not even remotely close. Libertarian Party, I think, turned in 43,000, but that wouldn't be enough. I mean, even if they got 45,000, it wouldn't be enough for a challenge. You really have to go way over. Hey, sorry, I have a dog here who's acting crazy. At any rate, so that's what we did. Now, in New York, you can have, say, RFK Jr. chose to run as Libertarian for president, and I was on the Libertarian ballot for U.S. Senate. They have a line, which means that you can circulate the same petition for everyone. So we could make sure that he got on the ballot, or we could create an independent body, which is called Peace and Freedom or whatever, which is what I actually would prefer if could happen, where you could have a whole bunch of people, 5 people running for Congress against the worst warmongers. I would be running for U.S. Senate, which is statewide. Bobby Kennedy would be the top of the line. And then you would have to have a different petition for the different congressional districts, but for the statewide race, it would be the same petition. So it wouldn't add extra signatures. It would be the same 45,000 for the whole line. And in that way, in this state, it actually is not a disadvantage. It's actually an advantage to have more candidates, because then you have some fire going on in various different districts. But every state is different. So I personally don't know which states the Libertarian parties or Green Party, Libertarian or Green or other parties have ballot status. At the ballot access seminar I attended that was hosted by the Libertarian National Party in DC, I was seated next to the head of the Constitution Party, and I think they are on the ballot, and I was sort of amazed, in some very large number of states. But yeah, so that's what we did. It was crazy. It was absolutely insane. People worked very hard, and it's evil. I literally couldn't do anything. I had 6 weeks where I could not do anything. I couldn't go to an event unless I were guaranteed that I would get at least 100 signatures there. You couldn't do, and I shut down. We raised a bunch of money going into it. The petitioning did cost about $80,000, not because we paid people. We paid like a stipend and covered gas, but gas, housing, and I had $30,000 of lawyers because there were various things. Like, I joined the Libertarian Party in a couple lawsuits, one of which, it was insane beyond belief. In the middle, the rules are 45,000 signatures plus at least 500 valid signatures in each of 13 of the 26 congressional districts, which means making sure you had about 1,000 to 1,500 signatures in at least 13 congressional districts, which does require that you know where the congressional districts are. They changed the congressional districts in the middle of the petitioning, and it wasn't until the 5th week of the 6 weeks of petitioning that we knew where the congressional district lines were.
Holy cow.
Yeah, it was so outrageous. And so I joined the Libertarian Party in a lawsuit, or an intervention, a legal intervention, to say this is really outrageous. This is insane. You should give us more time. You should cut the signature requirement in half. You have to give some relief. And they were so disgusting. They said no. And then we said, part of the issue is COVID, because people are still, even though it was no longer a state of emergency, attendance at churches and different places was like 1/3 of what it had been. And so we said that was a hardship. And they said literally, and I kid you not, I have it in writing, the judges put this in writing, well, if people are worried about COVID, nothing is preventing any candidate from making an appointment on Facebook or by telephone to collect a signature. And I thought, wait, you're going to... I'm going to set up 45,000 appointments. I'm going to drive 3 hours to get a signature from someone who then doesn't show. I mean, forget it. It's really evil.
That's just not feasible. It's impossible.
No, and that was their point. They said, and in one of the discussions, they literally said, we don't want people whose views don't conform with the majority opinion to be on the ballot. So what the hell is the point of an election?
Exactly. You know, and I'd like to add Anastasia because she's had her hand up for a little while here. I bet your hand's getting tired. You want to unmute your mic and join us?
Sure.
Anastasia Battle.
Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Good to be on, Lori. Thanks for hosting this. This is really awesome. I would just like to add, as much as a pain in the butt this was for Diane, you got well over the 45,000 mark, and hopefully you don't kill me for saying the number, but it was at least 60,000 that you got through the hard work of 200 volunteers, which was absolutely amazing. So I just want to, I know what you were saying, Craig. I mean, but I'll just say that we're in a totally revolutionary period right now, and we should not be operating the way politics has been running for the last decades, because there's a different mood that I'm feeling right now between what happened with the BRICS process, what's happening with this Canadian, salute to a Nazi, what you're seeing with now, what I get the sense of within the peace movement, which, I'll just reveal who I am. I am the moderator of the International Peace Coalition. I coordinate and organize a ton of stuff. This is what ran Humanity for Peace. What I'm getting the sense of is that people don't trust any party. They don't trust anybody. And were someone to run as an independent, they would say, hey, maybe that's somebody we can trust. And quite frankly, personally, I felt completely excited when I heard the rumor that maybe he'd be running as an independent.
And I hate to interrupt, but I just want to interject. Bobby Kennedy is someone that you can trust. I've known him for 16 years. I know his heart is true, and people sense that. They sense his genuineness and his honesty. They might not always agree with him. They might not always like his positions on certain things, but they understand that he's being genuine with them, and he's willing to listen and change his mind if he's persuaded, which most politicians would never do. They pick a position, and no matter how wrong it is, they double down on wrong. But Kennedy is not like that. So anyway, I just wanted to say you can trust him, and go ahead.
No, I'm just saying that that's the feeling I'm getting, is that people have had their ears perked. Like, where are we going to go? And I've been challenging everybody that I've met. We have to be the leadership, right? Don't wait. I agree. Like, we should, RFK Jr., I know what you're saying about him being a trustworthy candidate, but we're a republic, right? We're supposed to be an educated citizenry. We are the leadership of the country. We could actually make this a coalition campaign. Wouldn't that be amazing if this was a coalition campaign where people just dropped their damn ideologies and said, screw it. We're going to take over this country in an amazing fashion where we do something which seems absolutely impossible, but we do it. I mean, that would be absolutely amazing and completely remoralizing.
That's
right?
what I'm dreaming of, too.
We just ended the McCarthyite era, right? Today.
I'm not so sure, did we? It seems like it's back.
No, McCarthy was just thrown out earlier today. It's a joke.
Oh, I thought you meant Senator Joe McCarthy. I'm sorry.
No. It's just a joke. But I mean, McCarthy.
Speaker McCarthy is no longer Speaker McCarthy.
Right.
Yes.
Right. But the guy might as well have been, a McCarthyite. But I'm just saying that there's something in the air right now, and we should just seize it and do something that you never thought that we could do, and just, I don't really know exactly how to express it other than I think we have to have a certain unbridled optimism right now that we can revive this country and make this a good nation. We are not a bad nation, and the people do want to represent what this country should represent. So anyway, I just want to express that and really, underline what Jose and Diane were saying.
That is beautiful. I could not agree more. And I do want to bring in Aaron B. Herald with the Poor People's Politics. He's had his hand up for a while too. You can unmute your mic, Aaron, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm glad you made it tonight, and thanks for your patience waiting to speak. What's on your mind?
Oh, thank you, Lori. I'm actually kind of having a surreal moment because there's a lot of people in this room that I respect a lot, like Jose and Craig, man. You guys are inspirations, and especially, like, I'm a big Jimmy Dore guy. Jimmy's inspired me to kind of do what I'm doing now, so I really have a lot of respect for people in this room. But I'm going to be the dumb guy in the room and ask a question that I have no idea what the answer is. But what are the chances of a write-in campaign for Kennedy? Because it used to be you could write in anybody you wanted for president, right? I don't know if it's still that way. I've actually never voted. This is going to be maybe the first election I'll vote for. Maybe it'll be 2028. But I feel like we're getting closer to having independent and third-party candidates. And, a lot of it is, Anastasia just made a great point. Like, I'm a nobody from Maine that's in a room with the people that I never thought I would have been 6 months ago. Your voice matters. If you put your voice out there, you have a reach, especially with the technology and everything we do today. So how would a write-in campaign nationwide go for Bobby if that was something like that to happen?
Man, that is an excellent question. And, my election integrity expert here is Craig Pasta Jardula. Do you happen to know the answer, Craig?
Well, I'll just say simply that, that's what I'm expecting to happen if he cannot get ballot access in certain states, that he will be in as a write-in. Now, traditionally, if you look in write-in candidates, they don't do well at all. And that's the last thing we want to have happen. So if, in fact, he is subjected to a write-in in a certain state, I think it almost just takes him out of the game, personally.
I kind of agree.
Can I just respond to that, though, really quickly? Because the only thing that's different is Kennedy, the Kennedy name, the Kennedy brand. Like, the average people, that means something, right? That's the advantage Kennedy has over every other candidate right now, because you go around and ask regular people in the streets who are not involved in politics about Marianne Williamson, they go, who? You ask about, any other candidate that's on the lower end of the tier, right? They say who, but you say Kennedy, they say, oh, I know Kennedy. Which one are you talking about? And that opens the door. So that's a powerful thing that I don't think can be overlooked, because a lot of people thought Trump wasn't going to win either, and he ended up winning, and I saw that happen way beforehand.
Yep. But Trump was also on the ballot, right, in all 50 states too, as well. So that's a big thing, and that's when you talk about that Libertarian Party and why I'm pushing for that. It's not just because I align with a lot of their ideas and ideology. I mean, what Diane just talked about, when you join a case with libertarians, you have that power of the libertarian already established party that's there. They were in 50 states for Joe Jorgensen, 50 states for Gary Johnson, and these guys are not well known. But, and I don't want to kind of bash on the electorate, right? The voters out there maybe are sometimes just, we call them normies, right? They're not that sophisticated. Don't get me wrong. I think that Kennedy, as a writing candidate, would do better than most candidates out there, but it would definitely put him behind the 8 ball as far as trying to make a really big, serious stamp and win. So, we don't want that. We don't want him to be a write-in in any state. We want him on the ballot as many states as possible. And don't get me wrong. It could be attained through the independent way, but it's just an uphill battle where I think a lot of resources would be lost, as opposed to just going with an already established party, and it'd be a lot easier that way.
And I agree, but I also think that if it comes down to Biden, Trump, and Kennedy, right? People want to vote for somebody they believe is a good person. I don't think most people believe Biden or Trump are a good person. So that has another thing in an advantage. And I'm not on the Kennedy bandwagon. I have to learn more about him before I jump on board, right? But I'm just saying there's a possibility in the name brand there that something crazy could happen, because we live in crazy times, people.
Yeah. But unfortunately, the normies, they're going to decide this election, and they kind of have bought into the propaganda and the fact that a lot of us in this room that you're talking to, and thank you so much for the compliments, but a lot of us, we're shadow banned, demonetized, thrown out, so it's going to be tough for us to get our message out to the normies out there. I'm not saying we shouldn't try and we can't make a dent, but these are just the realities. We have to understand when we're going to the polls, and on that day, a lot of people are not politically inclined. So it's so important to get them on as many states on the ballot, as many states as possible.
Man, you're such a bummer, Pasta. No, I don't know. I would just respond.
No, you're a realist.
Are you willing to do the work to change it, though? It sounds like you don't think it's possible.
I'm sorry, I'm eating a little ceviche. I just think it's tactical. It's a tactic. It's just a better tactic to do so. Listen, Jose, first of all, I can't wait to talk to you about China. That's going to be so exciting.
China.
I'm just thinking what's best tactically. I don't think joining the Libertarian Party has enough luggage for him not to go there. In fact, I think it's a better thing. And, he was going to Pork Fest. He was talking to New Hampshire a lot. That's a stronghold for libertarians. So I just think it's the better move for him to do so.
I agree. For what it's worth.
Yeah.
For what it's worth.
I just want to tell one quick story about a write-in. I see Kynan has his hand up, and I guess Caleb has his hand up. But in New York, the Republican Party screwed this, not literally, candidate. Her name was Ola Huatme. Okay, the real common, easy name. And what happened is she was running for Congress, and someone set it up so she filed her petitions late, so she wasn't on the ballot. So she had to run as a write-in. And what they did is they handed out pens with her name on them, Ola Huatme, and they did a total aggressive door-to-door campaign for her as a write-in candidate, and she nearly got the nomination. She got over 40% of the vote. So obviously you don't want to do a write-in because Craig or Pasta is completely right. They don't tend to do well, although in this rigged system, a write-in sometimes might be better because you actually have the ballots and you can show it and you have to look at the paper ballots. Kennedy is a different name, but that would be a whole order of magnitude different to run as a write-in. And I think it only should be reserved for states where he can't get on the ballot otherwise, and then you could have the whole nation descend on those states and hand out pencils with his name or whatever.
That was kind of my point, like a combination of both. It wasn't just like a nationwide write-in campaign, but like he can obviously get on the ballot in some states easier than others, and the ones he don't, like make it a write-in campaign.
And you know, where are you from in Maine, Aaron, if you don't mind my asking?
Where am I from in Maine? You want me to give up my location in this room? The CIA must be listening. No, I live up in Anson, Maine. It's up in northern Maine. Lisa Savage lives not too far from me.
Oh, I see. I grew up in Bar Harbor. That's why.
Oh, my uncle used to run a hotel down in Bar Harbor, and they had a little private lake behind it.
Oh, how nice. Okay, well.
You know what I was thinking?
Go ahead,
it
Lori.
would not surprise me a bit. In the states, if Kennedy has to run as a write-in candidate in certain states, wouldn't it be just like the Democrats to find some other guy named Kennedy and put that guy on the ballot? So to confuse the voters, when they write in the name Kennedy, they count the votes for the other guy named Kennedy. I mean, they do things like that. It wouldn't surprise me at all. I wanted to go to Caleb Maupin because Caleb is also in New York. We got a lot of New Yorkers here tonight. My good friend Caleb Maupin is here, reporter for RT, founder for the Center for Political Innovation. And Caleb was my guest Saturday night on the Strange Bedfellows podcast. We had yet another amazing conversation. I always love talking to Caleb and getting his insights as someone who is truly politically independent. The CPI doesn't endorse any candidates. They're not aligned with any political party. Caleb is a communist, a socialist. And really has some refreshing insights to share. So I wanted to welcome Caleb Maupin to the panel. How you doing, Caleb?
I'm great, and thank you for getting my disclaimer out of the way, because we do not endorse any candidate. We do not campaign or petition for any candidate. So it was important to get that out of the way. But I will say I really enjoyed what I've heard, because it kind of fits in with one of the points that I was going to make here. But it's interesting because, I was listening to your opening, Lori, where you talked about this individual who clearly has some kind of mental health issue, who showed up at the rally and what looks like some kind of possible assassination attempt. And I really want to thank you for following that and making that information available. You would think mainstream media would be all over this, that this would be like front page news, and that the court appearances would all be on CNN or something. I mean, this is like...
It's baffling, isn't it?
It
Strange.
is. You have a Kennedy running for president, and some dude shows up with multiple badges and firearms at the event. I mean, this is really important that you're doing this. The journalism you're doing there is really, really important. So
and claims to be a Fed. That's the craziest part. And he hasn't even been charged by the Feds, and the FBI and the U.S. Marshal Service don't have any interest in this guy. I mean, what the hell? If he had tried to access the Capitol on January 6th, I bet they'd be interested in him. And I just want to say thanks for the kind words about my reporting. As far as I know, I'm the only reporter who's been covering this, much to my surprise. I don't know any other reporters who were actually there today in Los Angeles when Adrian had his mental competency hearing. And I do want to tell everyone that in Los Angeles, it's a little different. Most courts around the country these days, they have virtual court and a virtual gallery where members of the public can observe court proceedings for free. All you need is the login link, and a lot of courts are doing that now. But in Los Angeles, it's different because it's Hollywood, and Adrian's trial was, at the Hollywood courthouse. They've got all these celebrity trials, and they make money off of it. LA County makes money charging media outlets for access. If you're a journalist and you want remote access to watch the trial, you can get it, but it'll cost you $750. So that's what I have to pay to get access to these court proceedings. This is not free for me, guys. I would either have to fly to Los Angeles, which is also expensive, and get a hotel and do all of that to cover the trial in person, or I could watch the proceedings remotely, but for a media pass, it costs $750. And he's got another hearing coming up on the 16th of October. I hate to ask for money. I really, really hate to ask. But I do have a donation link at the top of the space in the nest if you want to support my reporting. I'm bringing you a lot of information, but it's costing me a lot of money. I also have to pay for copies of documents. I've got about 60 pages of documents so far, and I've had to pay for those. It all really adds up. I'm in this several $100 by now, and I've only raised about 100 on my fundraisers. So if you can afford to donate and help me out and support my work, it would be appreciated. And maybe I can convince Craig to team up with me since he's in LA, and maybe he can actually go for free and observe the proceedings right there at the courthouse. But anyway, I want to go to Kynan. I'll go to Kynan next, but I want Caleb to finish his thought. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Caleb. I had to put in a shameless plug for my work.
Well, that's okay. It's important stuff that you're doing, and what you described about the limits to access. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Wow. I'm glad you're pressing through and doing all you can to bring us the facts. And they're putting up barriers, just like they're putting up barriers to get people on the ballot. But I want people to realize that what happened today with Speaker McCarthy, that's big. First time in history. And what's happening in Canada, not what happened, which is that they honored this Nazi, but the fact that there is widespread outcry about it, that's also big. And that it's pretty clear there are big divisions among the elite that are in power right now. And they are fighting among themselves. And whatever unity they may have had in regards to their warmongering policy is starting to shift. And that is a really good sign. And it shows that kind of a wedge, a moment could be approaching where the kind of work that we do could become much more vital and important. Those of us here who are committed to peace, committed to stopping the march toward World War III, those of us who are committed to trying to stop the way things are moving and the low-wage police state, it's extremely important that we press ahead. And I want to talk, when you talked about this individual, and I'm sure more information will surface about this individual who showed up at the event, but it seems like there's clearly mental illness there, but that mental illness is compounded by a lot of internet confusion. And the sad thing about the time we live in is that it's really kind of getting to the fact that a lot of mental illness is rooted in social isolation. The cure for mental illness in a lot of cases is connecting with other people, being part of a group, being part of an organization, working together with other people to achieve a common goal. And when people are isolated and when people are alone and when people have access to the vast amounts of information that are all over the internet, And when they're very much in pain or whatever, that's when, the kind of schizophrenic delusions that take over many people, that's when they kind of develop. And that it seems like there has been a big effort to some degree or other to manipulate and weaponize various individuals who have some kind of mental health issue. Just because this guy obviously seems to be out of touch with reality doesn't mean there weren't forces that saw that and used that to their own ends. And that's very, very scary and disturbing. And that, we actively need to be encouraging people who want to stop the march toward World War III, who want to stop the low-wage police state, to not just do so on the internet. And instead to connect to real communities of people that are committed to doing so. And it's urgent that this stop being an internet thing and it start being an in real life thing. And that's why it's a shame Nick isn't here. I would have praised him once again, as I've done before, for the amazing Rage Against the War Machine rally that he organized. Angela McCurdle of the Libertarian Party also deserves a huge shout out, and everyone who was there and built it, Pasta, Diane Sare, others, they deserve absolute admiration for building that rally. I'm proud to say the Center for Political Innovation was a sponsor, and we had a reception afterwards for Scott Ritter. And I just want to invite people, if you have the opportunity, coming up in December 2nd, we're having an all-day anti-imperialist conference in Portland, Oregon. And we're hoping that in the winter season, we can take this opportunity to regroup and connect people with each other, people from different perspectives. There are some libertarians in this milieu. There are people that are conservative. There are people that are left. There are people that are from all different backgrounds. We do represent the majority of the American people. The majority of the American people don't want World War III. They don't want to see their living standards go down, no matter how much you tell them they deserve it or that it has to be done for the climate. People want better wages and better living standards. They want to see their lives get better, not worse. They want the roads to be paved. They want power plants and electricity. They want education. They want things to improve in the country, and it's not right now. Things are not improving. And the Kennedy campaign is a great example. As I said, we don't endorse any candidate. But one thing that I just see a huge amount of with RFK is I hear people who disagree with him about Israel, and then they just write him off completely. And so much of our politics these days has just kind of turned in to a chance to morally grandstand, a virtue signal. I'm good. And they disagree with RFK, and I disagree with him too about Israel. But his campaign is not about Israel. His campaign clearly represents, to some degree or other, a stand against the police state that is unfolding, a stand against the lockdowns and how they were utilized by some forces, mainly the big corporations, against the lower level corporations and against working people and small businesses, etc. His campaign is very, very important. And if you just find one disagreement with it and you just write it all off, you're gonna miss the boat. And that there's a lot of that. And if it's just an online virtue signaling performance, people don't understand the importance of building a movement, building real connections, getting people to work with each other. I was just out in Portland and doing some of the preparation for our conference, and there was somebody I met with, and they said kind of the political awakening they had was at their job when they were doing all these preparations for the lockdowns, all these COVID measures. The person going over all the safety restrictions that they were taking with the masks and the spray and all of that said, "We do this because we are good people." And that just set off an alarm bell in her head, because her religious upbringing taught her that no one is a good person, right? We've all fallen short of the glory of God. None of us are perfect. And when this person was saying, "We do this because we're good people," something just didn't sit right with her. And that I think points to what's behind a lot of this internet virtue signaling. Is deep down we all know that we're flawed. Deep down we all know that we are not perfect. But this internet virtue signaling, this isolation, gives us the delusion we can pretend, right? If we just follow the rules and endorse the right people and make the right politically correct statements and don't ask questions and obey, we can fool everybody to think that we're a good person and not realize the flaws that we are really aware of. Well, all of us have flaws and all of us have made mistakes, but we have to learn to work with each other. And that the internet culture that has developed, where it's all just about performance, is really destroying social movements. And we need social movements now more than ever. I want to bring anti-imperialists together. I want to connect people with each other. I want people to work together. I want people to look past their differences and find what they have in common. That's what we're trying to do at the Center for Political Innovation. And I look at this example. I hope that we can find out what exactly happened with this person. But I look at that and I hear the statements the man made, and it really just makes me think of the tragedy of our times, which we as a community, libertarians, socialists, LaRouchists, conservatives, liberals, we need to actively overcome the social isolation that so many people feel, and we need to find a way to bring people together, to stand together, to oppose all of this. So I really thank you for organizing.
So true.
I really
so
thank
true.
you, and thanks again. And I really do appreciate it.
You know, what you just said really hit my heart, Caleb, because it's about, the way that I think that we can start to heal not only the divide, the political divide, but our brothers and sisters out there who are struggling with mental illness, is to build a community. They need love. They need someone to talk to. They need to feel like they're a part of something. They need a purpose and a mission in life. And they feel hopeless right now, and you get that. That's so much of what you do at CPI, is you're helping to direct people in positive ways to take political action to make this country a better place for everybody. And no matter what your political stripe might be. And something that you and I talked about on Strange Bedfellows this weekend, when you were on with me Saturday, we talked about something that you frequently say, that social media is I forget how you put it, but you said it was the most diabolical and pernicious method of mind control that's ever been developed. And I was wondering if you could elaborate on that and correct me if I quoted you wrong. I probably did.
Well, you got to the gist of what I'm saying. Look, they have artificial intelligence that monitors our every move on social media and then restructures our news feeds and our messages and everything based on that. And we now know, thanks to the Twitter files, they do have an agenda with this. It is not simply, automated to make ad revenue. They have a political agenda. And they're monitoring our every move. They're looking at what we like and what we don't like. They're in some cases listening to our conversations, not people, but machines, and crafting everything we see on social media with the intent of catering it to how they think we are and to what they want us to be. And that is very, very effective. And I have seen so many people who've lost relatives, lost friends over, social media fights that seem very contrived. Again, highlighting people's differences, playing up, clashes in personality that people would just look the other way about in real life. And it's very scary what is happening. And you have to actively resist. I've started telling people, rather than, we used to say to people, well, don't live in a bubble. Now I say the opposite. Actively create your own bubble. Find out what it is, who you're committed to maintaining a relationship and a friendship with, and do everything you can to maintain that bubble, right? Actively push back. Do not let the algorithms rule you by default. Instead, take control of your mind. Decide what you want to read, what you want to look at, and don't let anything go to the default, what just happens to be there, because at the end of the day, it's not random. It's what has been selected for you.
It is not random. And I don't know if you share my belief, or if anybody here shares my belief, that I believe that QAnon is a psyop. I believe that QAnon is most likely created by the CIA or military intelligence, as Q claims, and that it's all a big disinformation psyop and maybe even a brainwashing operation. Recently, I did an episode of Strange Bedfellows with two of the best Kennedy assassination researchers that I know, Jim DiEugenio, who is the editor of kennedysandking.com. He's also the screenwriter on Oliver Stone's new 4-part documentary, JFK Revisited. I have great respect for Jim DiEugenio. And I also had Lisa Pease on with me, and she wrote a book about the RFK assassination conspiracy called A Lie Too Big to Fail. I highly recommend those books if you haven't read them. And I asked them their thoughts on this Adrian Paul Aspiro guy. We did a whole episode, and if you're curious, you can find it on my YouTube channel or my Rumble channel. You can watch this episode, and we explored the question, was Adrian Paul Aspiro brainwashed by this whole QAnon business. Obviously, from the details that I gave you tonight, his statements to police and his public statements in his TikTok video, he's obviously into the QAnon thing, the cult. I call it a cult. And I believe that is a brainwashing operation, a very sinister one, deployed by the intelligence community to literally drive otherwise sane people out of their minds and maybe even coerce them to commit acts of violence. And there have been many cases where QAnon people did commit kidnappings, assassination plots, murders. I think it's a very dangerous cult, and I'm very concerned about it. And now it's touching us. It's touching our campaign. And of course, I fear for Bobby's safety, because in the QAnon community, there's this whole weird fascination with the Kennedy family. They're obsessed with JFK. They're obsessed with RFK, JFK Jr. They've got this whole conspiracy theory that JFK Jr. didn't die in a plane crash in 1999 and that he's still alive and he's in the witness protection program and Donald Trump is protecting him. And one of these days he's going to emerge, I guess, with his wife and sister-in-law, who also didn't die in the plane crash. And he's going to run as Donald Trump's running mate. And they've been saying this for years, and it never happens. And, the 60th anniversary of the JFK assassination is coming up this November 22nd. And every year for the past few years, a certain faction of the QAnon cult gathers in Dallas around that anniversary, and they hang out in Dealey Plaza, the scene of the crime, and they chant and they sing songs and they do all this kind of weird culty stuff. And they say they're waiting for JFK.
Are we there? Is she still there?
I'm here. Craig, is that you?
Are you Craig? I don't think Craig can hear you, Lori.
Oh, okay. I see he's unmuted. I thought he wanted to say something. Sorry about that. Where was my train of thought? The JFK gathering in Dallas. Every year, especially on the big anniversaries, like the 50th anniversary, and this year will be the 60th anniversary, people come from all over the world and they gather in Dallas, Texas, and they meet in Dealey Plaza and they go to the 6th floor museum, the Texas School Book Depository building. And they just kind of come to pay their respects. There are also several JFK assassination conferences that go on every year in Dallas, and they're usually big on the anniversaries. But just over the past 3 or 4 years, I'm a JFK researcher and historian. I frequently attend these conferences. We have had our conferences invaded by these QAnon people, and we're there to do serious research. These are serious academics and scholars who, come there to speak and compare notes. But we've got all these literally like crazy people who are invading our conferences now, and they take over Dallas in the past few years, and they bring huge crowds of people with them. And it's like some kind of almost religious mission that they're on. But in my opinion, these people have a screw loose. I think that some of them are very dangerous. And I'm afraid now that they may pose a threat to Bobby Kennedy. And after what happened in LA, I have to tell you guys, that really shook me up on a personal level. I've got goosebumps just sitting here talking about it. The whole thing just sent a shiver down my spine. And I want Secret Service protection now more than ever. I know that the Secret Service failed his uncle in Dallas. We all know that. There are many who say that maybe he doesn't need the Secret Service because, he's got private security. But folks, private security costs a lot of money. And if he's going to run independent, and it makes it even harder to qualify for Secret Service protection, as an independent, we're going to have to raise so much money. And a huge chunk of our campaign funds are going to go to paying for that security. So I do encourage people to go to Kennedy24.com and please make a donation. We really need your help, especially if he's going to run third party or independent. And I did want to go to Kynan, because Kynan has had his hand up for the longest time. And I know your arm must be sore, Betty. I'm sorry for the wait. Please do unmute your mic and say hello. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Yeah, it's a little bit sore. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Lori. This has been actually a really wonderful discussion. And I just want to thank Diane, Anastasia, Jose, and others for their input. But I actually just wanted to quote from a book real quickly, which, Laura, you're probably familiar with. It was written by RFK Sr. during his 68 campaign to seek a newer world. And in that, he actually devoted a chapter to outlining a new China policy for the U.S. And I'll just read from it really quickly towards the end. After he outlines the history, he actually says, quote, "We cannot know the future course of our relations with China. All our intentions and labor may ultimately dissolve in violence and bloodshed. But there is another possibility. Perhaps someday an American diplomat may go to China, carrying with him the same instructions Daniel Webster gave to Caleb Cushing in 1843, to tell the people of China that your mission is entirely pacific, that you are a messenger of peace sent from the greatest power in America to the greatest in Asia, to offer respect and goodwill and to establish the means of friendly intercourse." I just want to mention that quote because Jose, of course, had mentioned our trip to China, and in our discussions with people on the street, they had a total understanding of their role, I think, in mediating relations between the nations and the world, and really putting us on a path towards peace and towards a global community of a shared future. And of course, I think, they're mediating this situation between the Russia and the United States with their 10 points that they put for resolving the conflict in Ukraine. And I think that just shows us what our role is here in the United States of organizing people towards this similar path of actually respecting China as a nation, but of entering a new era of peaceful relations between other countries. And in regards to RFK's candidacy, I think that's the key question: avoiding war and actually making peace through development the primary focus. And of course, and I think him going independent is absolutely the key to achieving this. And rather than dealing with the nuts and bolts, I think the question is, how do we actually get the people who don't vote to believe in their government again before it disappears in a mushroom cloud, or really just from the lack of participation? And what Diane went through with the petitioning campaign, where we got, 66,000 signatures, just from, 200 volunteers working their asses off, day in and day out. It shows, I think, that it can be done, if people put their minds to it. So I just wanted to share that because I'm optimistic. I think that this can be done. I think Kennedy can achieve this. And really, there should be more discussions like this, or organizing discussions of how we can further coordinate our actions to, achieve this. And Lori, I think you're contributing greatly to this. So I'll just end with that and just say thank you.
Thank you. You are one of the brightest young people. You bring such positive energy to this whole thing, and you inspire me. You, Jose, and our next speaker, Holden Culotta, who's also one of my favorite people, one of my favorite new friends that I've met. One of the greatest things about the Kennedy campaign is that I've met so many new friends. It's really bringing people together, and I get to meet people like Holden Culotta. So you can unmute your mic and say hello. How you doing, Holden?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much, Lori, for those kind words. And good to see Kynan, Jose, all of you guys up here again. And Lori, this just to echo what Caleb was saying earlier, thank you so much for reporting on this full story of Adrian Paul Ispuro. This is completely absent from corporate media. Like, I have not heard anything about this in pretty much any other news organization since it happened. I've even, talked to a couple people, like my dad the other day. I mentioned, oh, this armed man showed up to the Kennedy rally, and he had no idea. Like, people don't even know that this happened. So I really appreciate you taking the time to dig into that and report on it.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
I've been doing news for 35 years, Holden, and I know a news story when I see one. I know it's newsworthy. In our occupation, they say if it bleeds, it leads. And so a lot of news directors out there might be looking at this story and saying, well, he didn't actually fire his weapon. He didn't kill anybody. He didn't injure anybody. Therefore, it isn't news. But I strongly disagree. What I just told you guys in the first hour of the space tonight, I'm sure you were sitting there with your jaws on the floor. I mean, if you'll pardon the expression in the news business, it's what we call a no shit story. And it's one of those stories that if you were reading it, you'd read a paragraph and you'd say, no shit. And then you'd read the next paragraph and you'd go, no shit. And third paragraph, no shit. I mean, it's just one of those stories that's so crazy. It's a no shit story, and it's newsworthy. And I'm baffled that the media isn't covering it. I'm sad that reporters were not there in that courthouse today observing his mental competency hearing, because that's very important to the trial. And the trial doesn't even begin until next March. March of 2024 is when it's docketed to begin. So we will be in primary season as Adrian is going through his trial. And until then, he's free to walk the streets of Los Angeles. And that scares the crap out of me because Bobby lives in Los Angeles. So anyway, I just wanted to say that. I'll let you continue with your thought. Go ahead, Holden.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, it's such a sad reflection on the state of journalism today, I think, because I completely agree with you. Like, this is a major story. This should be, all these news organizations should be digging into this, should be figuring out what went wrong here. And to echo what you were saying earlier, too, I mean, I cannot think of a charitable explanation for why Kennedy is being denied Secret Service protection. I think, anybody looking at this, even, quote unquote normie observers are like, yeah, the guy's named Kennedy, like, he should have Secret Service protection. Seems like a no-brainer. And I can't, like, the most charitable explanation I can think of is just what Bobby said on Tucker, which is, they're trying to bleed him dry and, to spend money on his own private security. That's like the most charitable explanation I can think of, which is just really sad to think about. But I wanted to echo what Caleb was saying about the Rage Against the War Machine too. I mean, I think I've said this in this space before, but that really excites me. I'm 22 and have gone my whole life without seeing a meaningful anti-war movement in this country, and the War Machine is bigger than it has ever been. And so I am really looking forward to that energy turning into, first of all, going offline, and turning into a real rally, and a peaceful revolution, that can overwhelm this uniparty, because that is the kind of thing that can unite people from all these different, left, right, socialist, libertarian, wherever you're coming from, being against the war machine, that has just, doubled and tripled and quadrupled in size just over and over, constantly expanding, is something that can bring people together. I think there's a lot of potential there. I wanted to say something about the write-in campaign too. I think, obviously we want to avoid getting to that point. I certainly hope that he can get on the ballot, as an independent or with a party. If he ultimately does go that way, I think that would be great too. But Lisa Murkowski, a senator from Alaska, actually won re-election as a write-in candidate back in 2010. She was an incumbent senator, so people already knew her, but she has a pretty difficult name to spell. You think about Murkowski, and she got enough voters to figure out how to spell her name and win that election as well. So it's not outside the realm of possibility that could happen. But the 2024 election, I also feel like, is going to be a lot more chaotic than we might be thinking. Trump may be removed from some state ballots as well. There could be a handful of other major candidates. I mean, No Labels has, 70 or $80 million. Cornel West is a big, somewhat big candidate himself, a big name. So there could be, a certain amount of chaos that kind of throws out the traditional duopoly mindset that people are in, where, if everything's kind of upended, people are more willing to vote for someone outside of that duopoly. And I wanted to speak to the idea of a coalition campaign, because I love that as well. I would love to see Bobby kind of turn his campaign into not, change his campaign, but focus more on push for alternate parties. I think that would resonate with a lot more people, because there's a lot of people who are specifically anti-duopoly right now, just, against this two-party system, and they want to see it broken down. They don't really care who would do it. And I would love to see Bobby kind of spearhead this movement and bring along a number of different parties with him. And I think that can be done at the local level too. Like if he can get, a bunch of local candidates, maybe state candidates, to run on his vision as well, along with him, that would be a fantastic, just a fantastic look across the country, to have this broad coalition, encouraging people to get involved locally at the state level. And it sounds like, I'm not too familiar with ballot access laws, but from what I've heard so far tonight, it sounds like getting more candidates on board would be a force multiplier for getting ballot access as well. So that seems like a good way to go, to get, local candidates, state candidates, a bunch more people on board. But of course, they're going to pull all kinds of tricks to try and stop it. I mean, we have not even seen the beginning of the tricks that are going to be pulled against this. Just with, how the DNC treated him, they were willing to change the rules of their own charter. They refused to ever even acknowledge him. I think we're going to see a lot of legal action, just anything that prevents or makes it harder for him to get on the ballot, or prevents it at all. So I think, getting a force multiplier, getting more parties on board, local candidates on board, state candidates on board, this could turn into a real broad movement to take down this two-party system. And I think that is exactly what people are looking for right now, like that peaceful revolution that, takes into account the anti-war movement that I'm really excited to see grow next year. I miss Nick being here. I always love hearing from him, and specifically about the Rage Against the War Machine. I think that's one of the most positive things to happen in our country in the past couple of years. So really excited to see where that goes. But I guess I'd kind of put a question to the panel just to close up. Like, what are your thoughts on that idea of a coalition campaign, like bringing a bunch of candidates at the local, state level, at these lower levels on board in the campaign? And would that be like a force multiplier in getting ballot access too?
I really like that idea. And it's I think it's kind of what Andrew Yang was saying he wanted to do with the Forward Party. I don't know if that's still his mission, but, that's kind of what I was hoping that the Forward Party would do. And I know that you were involved with the Forward Party. It sounds like you left the Forward Party perhaps in disappointment, some degree of disappointment, because it wasn't fulfilling some of the promises that were made.
Hey, Lori?
But yeah.
I'm so sorry that I have to exit right now. I have something going on very shortly, and I have to get to it. But I did want to just close out and just say thank you so much for inviting me to the Twitter talk today. And I wanted to say goodbye to everybody here, if that's possible, real quick.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you came. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you to everybody else who showed up today. And like I said, I look forward to talking with Jose about his China trip. And because it's so important right now. It's one of the biggest issues out there. And I think what Kennedy tweeted out earlier today and what you pointed out is very, very important. Look, I just want to finish up by also saying that I don't think it's impossible for an independent candidate to get on every single state. I just think tactically, without wasting resources, because the margin of error, I think, for him to have even a realistic chance is slim to none. It's very small. We can't waste any time, any resources, any space. So I'm still hoping that this announcement on the 9th will be about him running in the Libertarian Party as a leftist libertarian. However, I do think he's going to run as an independent. And, like Jose said, we got to knock on as many doors as we can and try to do whatever we can. If you are supporting Kennedy, to get him elected, and wish you all the best of luck on that challenge. And if you haven't gone to my new YouTube page, Craig Poster Jardula, I released my documentary, Lahaina on Fire, The Aftermath. We hit some stuff right on the nose. We were able to go over there and speak to the people themselves and bring back the real story on what the people of Lahaina are facing with disaster capitalism and the challenges they have up ahead. So thank you so much again, Lori, for having me on. I'm sure you guys will see me around on a few other shows. And I look forward to seeing you out there in the field.
Are you filling in for Jimmy Dore still this week?
You might see me here and there.
Okay, well, I love.
I don't want to ruin any of the surprises, but I look at it one show at a time, right? You know what I'm saying? That's the way I face things. But it's been an amazing opportunity to get a chance to go over there and use his megaphone for the things I believe in. So I'm just running with the opportunity and trying to make the best of it and try to just do one show at a time. So I'm sure you'll see me here and there. But I look forward to seeing you guys out there.
Well, I really enjoy, when Jimmy's not there, I think you're a great fill-in host. I really enjoy those days, and I love the Convo Couch. And I saw the premiere of your new film about Lahaina and really was impressed with that, too. Beautiful job putting all that together, and you got it together and released so fast. I was really amazed by that, too. But thanks for your citizen journalism on that, Craig. Really appreciate you and all that you do and for all that you're doing to try and help Kennedy. And what I'd really like to see, really, 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 is a RFK Jr. ticket with Tulsi Gabbard. That's my dream.
That's happening.
I hope so. I hope so. And if not Tulsi, a great libertarian unity ticket might be someone like Senator Rand Paul. I think that he and Bobby would see eye to eye on a lot of things. Of course, his father, Ron Paul, really loves Bobby and vice versa. They've been friends for a long time. And it would be quite a feat if we could pull off a ticket like that, because I think that would appease and make happy a lot of the, more conservative libertarians in our party. I think that's a ticket they could feel comfortable with. Or Thomas Massey. I'd love to see Thomas Massey, but I think Massey is unfortunately already committed to DeSantis. Maybe he'll change his mind. And I thought that Rand Paul was committed to Trump. Maybe he'll change his mind. You never know.
As long as it's not Lindsey Graham on that ticket, then I'll be fine. You have a great night, everybody.
I seriously doubt it.
Thank you again, Lori.
Great to talk to you, Craig.
Bye, guys.
See ya. Bye-bye now.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.